You're listening to Real Folk with me, Jo Burke.
So welcome aboard to Amanda Egan. You are a, what can we describe you? You were an actress and you then became an author, and a very successful one at that. The type of book that you're most well known for is, now I have a bit of a problem with this, so we can discuss this as well, chick lit.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that phrasing, or is that...
I'm perfectly happy with that. Chick lit, rom-com, whatever you like to call it. I'm perfectly happy, yeah.
Cool. And how many have you written so far?
Oh, no, there's a question. I think it's 15 full-length and 2 Christmas novellas.
When was the first one?
That's another good question.
I'm full of the questions.
I always have to ask Roy this because it's gone, in some ways it's gone so quickly and in other ways it's gone so slowly. I think I've been doing this now for about 9 years, properly. Yeah, about 9 years.
Right. And when you say properly, like most performers or self-funded artists and authors, I assume you were doing other things prior to that. So what was your journey to writing?
I'd always written right from a child. I'd always been a huge reader. Was always a bookworm, always had my head in a book. And, like lots of writers, always have drawerfuls of kind of half-written books, chapters, short stories. Never really thought, yes, I can do this, until, weirdly, my son developed school phobia. And I spent 3 years in his school car park or outside his classroom, literally just to get him into classes. So I, of course, did a lot of reading because there's not a lot else you can do. And then with, at the time, a borrowed laptop from my goddaughter, literally the first book just flew. And I think I wrote the first book within about 3 months.
That's really interesting. That happens quite a bit, doesn't it? I think when you've obviously just had all that stuff waiting to come out, and is that what it felt like?
Yeah, it did. Obviously, the first book is Diary of a Mummy Misfit, and that's based very loosely on my son's prep school that he went to, and the types that you might meet at the school gates. And I'll say here and now, there isn't a character in there that actually exists. They are all a mishmash of characters, so can't get sued. But all those little anecdotes and little things that have happened and things I've either overheard or had said directly to me suddenly became a novel.
It's interesting, isn't it? And it's about belonging, isn't it? Because you obviously felt completely out of kilter with that time of your life, and it's amazing that the way to deal with that was to sort of regurgitate it and make it sort of more palatable in the form of a book.
That's the word I would use.
Yeah, and it's incredible. So your son he developed a phobia for school.
He did.
Then many children do.
Well, yeah, this was pretty serious though.
Really.
It was when he moved up to secondary school. I'd had my mum living here for a while at the time as well, and she'd been having really serious panic attacks. So she'd moved in. She was half the week with us and then half the week at home with one of my sisters. And I don't know if kids as sponges pick up on these things, but whether or not that was coincidental, I don't know. But it was exactly the time that he moved up to secondary school, and he was just crippled.
You just don't know, do you? But what is interesting as well is that as horrendous as that obviously was at the time, that a huge positive came of it. And also the fact, I love that it wasn't even your laptop, it was a borrowed laptop. And because one of the things that I'm hoping to sort of help other people out there that listen to these podcasts is that the whole ethos that to do anything or to start anything, you have to have all the right equipment and it has to all be perfect is complete fallacy, because exactly right. So you can get going on well, especially with writing, on a pad and a piece of paper. That's not right, but a pad and a pen.
That's the one.
How many drafts did you do of that first one? Do you remember?
Well, I'd kind of written half of it, and I managed to get myself an agent, which was like a miracle because these things just don't happen. And he said, "Yeah, definitely get it finished." And the whole thing was then sent to him, and he wanted another plot line added, which, having written the book, was not the easiest thing to do. That all had to be added in red so that he knew where I'd added this new line. Then he would come back with other things that he wanted changed. So I'd say between my rewrites and his suggestions and rewrites, it was a good 7 or 8 different drafts.
And the other interesting thing there is, so did you write to many publishers or agents rather before you found the right one for you, or was it a case of
He was the first one. Well, it just so happened that I knew him from drama school, and he'd gone into the literary world. and absolutely loved it, but it ended up totally letting me down in the end, and I sacked him, but that's another story.
Well, these things don't always have happy endings.
But it was just so lovely to think, the first book that I'd ever actually finished had nabbed me an agent and had nabbed me lots of interest from Penguin and Random House. And I started thinking, is writing things easy? Anyone can get themselves an agent, and I'm going to get this book deal. And then, of course, it all just fizzled out. So it wasn't that easy after all.
No, so what happens? So it happens to an awful lot of authors, and it's not just authors, it's actors as well. You struggle to find an agent or somebody to get behind you, or a publishing house, and there's suddenly a lot of options, and then quite often those options end up coming to nothing. So what was the sort of story for you?
With the agent?
With that random, the publishers
What
as well?
happened was he said that we, Random House and Penguin had both expressed an interest, and there was a strong possibility that it could go to auction, which of course is something that every author, whether it's first author or otherwise, wants to hear. Then it was coming up to the book fair. So lots of people obviously were very busy. Once that was over, I kept chasing him up saying, look, have you been in touch with them? Have you been in touch with them? Basically taken his eye off the ball and was dealing with another client who he managed to get a book deal with. When he finally got back to them, the person, I think from Penguin, had joined Random House. So suddenly I had nobody at Penguin interested anymore. And the Random House people were saying that they'd literally signed somebody that was too similar to me. Because he hadn't kept on the ball and kept chasing, I lost out on the deal.
Yeah, that happens such a lot. And also that thing, I mean, that's an actor's as well as an author's thing, isn't it? Oh, we've got people just like you.
Yeah.
But the great thing about that story is that it didn't stop you. So what did you do then?
I had a huge sulk. I chucked the manuscript in the drawer and said, that's it, never writing again, never going to apply to an agent again. Then, of course, we had the Kindle came about. I thought, okay, let's give this a go. Let's see if I can do this myself. The rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah. So what was it? Was it 15 books later, you said?
Yeah, something like that.
That's amazing, though. That's a brilliant story. And the thing is, Amazon and Kindle did for a while just hugely open up the market for self-publishing and for people that, like yourself, that were sort of on the periphery of being published and for whatever reason didn't happen. How do you feel about it now? Because it's kind of moved on to being slightly less helpful.
Yeah, I have to be very careful when I talk about Amazon because my language is likely to go slightly blue. It's awful now. I mean, the way Amazon pay us, the way they categorise things, there's so much erotica. I've got nothing against erotica. Somebody published a chapter under my name when it's being published and they can barely string a sentence together. That's the kind of stuff that us as authors are up against, that people have to kind of get through to get to the decent stuff.
So when you say that, so somebody sort of hacked your account, basically?
No,
then,
that's
was it?
actually their name, Amanda Egan.
Oh.
And they write,
damn them.
A chapter of porn. And it ended up on my Amazon page, which wasn't great. But I think that's been taken off now.
Main thing is you're still writing, is that right?
I haven't actually been able to write anything since lockdown.
That's interesting. Neither have I. I went through it. Yeah. Do you know all these people that suddenly got so creative when that all happened? I was like, how are you doing that? My head's a mess.
No, I've heard that you've got the two extremes. You've got those that are churning out book after book after book because they're just loving it, and then those like us. Because the majority of my books are, I like to think, witty, and I'm just finding it really hard to be witty because there's really nothing to be laughing about at the moment.
No, it's tricky, isn't it? And I mean that's sort of the same for me. I mean, obviously, I had a couple of books that were on the go, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's the perfect chance to finish those," and I was like, "Yeah, but." Yeah. My brain says,
No, it's definitely true.
Yeah, it's such a weird experience, but hopefully, are you feeling a bit better now? Things seem a bit more positive? Or...
in some ways I am. In other ways, it's a hard slog to write a book. It's not just me, it's my husband Roy as well. He does all the editing, he does all of the book cover and all the promoting.
Like you said earlier, that, before you'd written your first book, you had all these notes and you kind of were writing it anyway. And that's sort of what I do, and I think a lot of writers and performers do that. So you're kind of doing it in your head anyway, but it's just finding the reason to go that one stage further, and all the hard work that entails, as you say. it's a lot if you've got an inkling
Yeah.
that zero is going to come from
And
it.
of course, I always think the next one could be, the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, because obviously they never go away. They're all there for people to discover and enjoy. So, so the first one was Diary of a Mummy Misfit. What was the last novel that you read?
The last novel was Half as Good as You.
And what was that one about?
That's about a married woman, young, who discovers her husband's gay, and their journey, really, how she feels she'll never find somebody as good as him. And of course she does, because that's what happens in rom-coms. And she also finds a winning lottery ticket in the street, and that kind of leads her to the new love interest.
You've done some Christmas novellas.
2 of those.
Is that something? Why do you do those? What's the difference? What's the joy in those?
The joy, they're quick to write, that's for sure. And it's quite good to have something every now and again at Christmas just to give away. You do a freebie on Kindle, people get a freebie and they like it, they then go on to buy your other books. So they're quite nice to just have as a little Christmas gift to people.
That's really nice. That's a nice thing to do. You do a lot for charity fundraising, and I've attended a couple of your events.
Yeah, I do fundraising for Age UK Wandsworth in memory of my mum, because she was one of their Be a Friend scheme, even into her 80s. She was a friend to the elderly. So yeah, I do an annual fundraising event for them, which of course this year won't be happening, but we'll be back next year.
Would you ever think, or be ready, do you think, to write something more personal?
Personal as in based around my story of my mum? No, I don't think so. I think that would be a step too far. Yeah, and I like the fluffy frilliness of chicklit, and that kind of losing yourself in another world of daftness, really.
And I mean, there's such a need for it, especially now. It's a shame you can't just write some more now, because everybody needs them. We need you, Amanda.
Dr. Burke has written a prescription. Write more.
Exactly right. Write some more, because we need the fluffy, because it's all not very fluffy at the moment.
It's all a bit prickly.
It's a bit spiky. So what other sources of inspirations, because there's one, isn't there, I seem to remember, I think it might have been a couple of years ago now, that was set in the world of drag queens.
That's right, Stilettos and Stubble.
That's the one.
That's another very sad lockdown story that I have to tell. We were very close to Stiletto and Stubble in the very first stages of becoming a musical. Yeah, and of course now, who knows, with theatres and the way things are going, a musical production company expressed great interest, and we met, and they asked if I could get three to four songs put together for them, and we did. We were just finishing the 4th one, and of course then we've had lockdown, so I guess there's not going to be any new musicals coming up anytime soon.
Live theatre will persist, and it will come back, and that sounds amazing. That sounds absolutely amazing.
Fingers crossed. I mean, I can just so see it, because it is just,
yes,
as you say.
As soon as you said
set
it.
in a drag club, and, woman finds love in a drag club. They loved it, and they thought it was very timely.
Yes.
So, my husband actually did the lyrics for one of the songs, and it is very, very good.
Oh, what's it called?
What, the song?
Yes.
That's a really good question, Jo.
Right.
Oh, God, that's dreadful, isn't it? I can see it in my head, and I'm trying to get to the title. I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, it'll come to you later on in the conversation. It's fine. It's fine. But that sounds like such an exciting opportunity. And the thing is, don't be disheartened about that, because what I would say is, if you feel like it's a long way off from a sort of being a West End musical, I would approach some smaller companies that would take it to Edinburgh, for example.
Well, I think that's where it starts, from what the theatre company were telling me, but they go and find the funding for it. I think that's how it starts. It starts off with the smaller ones, obviously, and gets tested and tested and tested, and then eventually would hit Broadway, of course.
Well, I still have every faith in that project. I don't think that's going to lose interest at all. I think it's going to be more needed than ever.
Well, fingers crossed.
Well, I mean, that whole world, I mean, considering sort of how dour everything's been, to spring back after lockdown and COVID with a Stilettos and Stubble type show, I think that sounds, I'd be there. I'd buy the tickets now if they want to.
I'd give you one for free.
Oh, thanks.
You're listening to Real Folk with me, Jo Burke. This would ordinarily be an advertising break,
But as I don't yet have an advertiser, why not check out standingoncustard.com, where you can buy all 4 of my children's books, plus my adult comedy book about online dating, all delivered free and signed by me. Standingoncustard.com. Back to the show. What's been your career sort of high so far out of everything that you've done?
Oh, my career high. Wow. I'm still waiting for it, Jo. Career high. I think Diary of a Mummy Misfit was number 1 in free at one point. That was pretty high because, you know, it takes a while to get to number 1 free in the Giblet and rom-com.
And even though you're not writing, because obviously you've said that you're the same as me, in that, you know, lockdown hasn't been an endless supply of material and being in the mood for writing. Have you just stopped writing anything altogether, or have you found that you are still feeling the need to just write to get things off your chest sort of thing, but they're not necessarily novels?
I've been note-taking, I would say. So a character will pop into my head, or a rough outline for a novel, or even maybe a snippet of conversation. So I make sure I've always got those, you know, to hand for, you know, the day that it all comes back to me.
And that's interesting. So what is your process as a writer?
I never ever plan. I never do a chapter plan. I need to have my characters first and roughly know where they're going on their journey, and then I've just got to start writing. And because I've got the characters already quite firmly in my head, they kind of lead me and tell me where they want to go. Because if I know at the beginning, this is where I used to fail in the past, if I know at the beginning I'm bored, I know the plot, it's like, oh, I've read that book, I'm not interested. So I kind of wing it a bit.
Yeah, I'm similar actually, because I'm always in awe of these people that have a whole, you know, Post-its of all the who's saying what, when, and doing it, and I feel like I always equate when I'm writing, and this goes for books and shows and everything, is that it's just a bit like channeling. I feel that I'm just channeling people. Yeah,
and I think the whole Post-it note thing you then look at, and it kind of becomes a job rather than creating. I know you've done all the creating beforehand, but then it just becomes boring to me.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose different things work for different people, but I think for me, I totally get your process, because it sounds similar to mine in the fact that I like the freedom of it, and I like you like finding out as you know, you don't know any more than the character does at that given time, and it's as much intrigue and
you get to surprise yourself, and I think if you surprise yourself, you'll surprise your reader, which is, you know, what I want to do.
Was anyone else writerly in your family? Do you know where you get
no, nobody
talent from? Or
nobody actually. Both my mum and dad left school without any qualifications. My mum went back to college in her 60s and did O-levels, but they both left school with no qualifications. And I've got a sister now who dabbles. She started writing, but she's always liked writing, but never really, she had a family to bring up, so she never really did anything with it. But she's kind of dabbling a bit now. But other than that, not that I know of. No one in the family has taken this path.
No, and what about the acting? Because that came first.
That's right. Yeah, I went to drama school when I was 18. And again, with writing, just found it really tough. And at the time, my dad died when I was 18. After I finished drama school, it was kind of a question of, there's lots of jobs if you want to do theatre and education or rep and move around the country. And my mum never, ever held me back. I would say she never held me back. She always said, you know, you've got to go and do what you want to do. But I couldn't do it to her. I couldn't just leave her on her own. So I guess I held myself back.
I totally understand that as well, because I didn't know that about your father, but I lost mine at 22. And it's the same thing. And I totally understand. You suddenly become so protective. And I always used to say, you know, when you're one parent down, the other one becomes so much precious. More valuable. Not that they weren't valuable together, but, you know, once you've lost one, you do really, really appreciate the other one so much more than you could ever imagine. And, you know, like, I've always been the same. I would never have taken a touring show or done anything that meant that I was too far away for that reason. Your mum sounds hugely interesting though, because she left school with no education and then took her O-levels in her 60s.
Yeah, she did O-level English literature and O-level maths. Or actually, I think actually by then, no, I think it was still O-levels, or it might have become GCSE by then, I don't know. But yeah, she did that in her 60s.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing to suddenly do.
Yeah, she was so proud of herself, and of course we were very proud of her as well. And Yeah, she was just determined to get some qualification. She felt she'd been robbed of her education, obviously because of the war. You know, it's never too late, basically.
You know, kudos, all power to her. That's an amazing thing to turn around and do when you're 60. And I mean, I know you obviously said that you were proud of her for doing that, but she must have been enormously proud of your achievement.
Oh, she was. She used to love keeping up with my sales and, you know, always talking to me about Twitter and what are people saying about your books now. And she used to read my blog. She was a very proud mummy.
Is your son, is he showing any signs of writerly fashion, or is it completely different to you?
I think he sort of dabbles a bit, but he will write all really weird stuff, my boy. He'll probably have a bestseller before me. It will be so weird. Yeah, he reads very peculiar stuff, so I think he will go that way if he decides to. But yeah, he'd have to have a bit of more self-discipline, I think.
During this time, it's quite difficult to maintain that as well, isn't it?
Definitely.
How has it all been living life under lockdown?
It's been fine. It's been us with our son Ben and his fiancée Kiki, so it's been the four of us, which has been okay. They're not champing at the bit to get out, which is amazing. They're very happy in their own company and with us, and yeah, we make it fun. We do daft nights. We did something for Eurovision. We had a party for four for Eurovision, and all sorts of silly things we get up to. So we're not murdering one another yet, but watch this space.
Good. Good. But you do love to entertain and do stuff, so it's finding ways to still sort of do that, I suppose. Yeah,
I've always loved entertaining, anything from murder mysteries to quiz nights to anything that is fun. A little bit of planning. I love all of that.
And are you doing, you talked briefly just about the charity fundraisers that you do. So your charity event would have been what, in October?
In October, yeah. Because the National Lottery is 25 years old this year, they were giving away grants, ironically, for people to get the community together, which of course we can't do now. But I was lucky enough to get £650 towards my charity event this year. Decorations, entertainment, food. But I can keep that money for next year. So we'll just make it bigger and better next year.
Fabulous. Oh, that's lovely. And the Age UK is, so your mum got involved with that first many years ago?
She did, yeah. I think she was probably in her 70s, and once again she was bored. So she became, they've got their Be a Friend scheme, so you get budded up with somebody, so she would go and sit and have a cup of tea with the elderly, and she did that more or less right the way through till she passed away. So when I wanted to do something in her memory, Age UK seemed the fitting charity to go with. So yeah, but I enjoy it. I love doing it.
It's good to do stuff for others, and I think especially during this time as well, it's nice to have something outside of yourself to focus on, isn't it? So you and Roy haven't come to blows yet over lockdown, so you're all still getting on fine.
We're used to being together. We met at work, so we're used to being together 24/7. We actually hate it when we're not, so I know that's very unusual for couples to say that, but we love being together.
How long have you been married?
26 years this year.
Yes. Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, and together for nearly 30, so a long time. And we still like one another, so that's good.
That's proper romance, isn't it? You don't hear about that so often these days. But it's so lovely. And Roy he's an Aussie, so was he was already here? You didn't meet in Australia?
No, he was here. He was actually my boss. I thought, he's got a good sense of humour and he makes me laugh. I was actually engaged at the time. That's another story. But
that sounds like a good story. Let me hear that story.
Anyway, he whisked me off my feet. What more can I say? And I've never looked back.
Oh, that's amazing. So how long were you engaged before?
Well, I'd been with the guy for 10 years.
Well, he'd had plenty of time to marry you, that's his own fault.
And I think we were engaged about a year. We were living together. Yeah, and he actually contacted me at the beginning of lockdown, which was very odd. It was quite nice to have just on Facebook to have a chat. And he's getting married again, so I'm happy for him.
Oh, that's nice. Isn't it nice when everyone's all nice and honest and open and normal about things?
I'm not so sure it was honest and open at the very beginning, but...
No, clearly, actually, very good point, Amanda. Clearly wasn't. And have you got, for listeners, a website for your literary?
They can go to, obviously, amazon.co.uk and look up Amanda Egan, Egan. That's my page. My author page is there. Or they can go to my blog, which is Mummy Misfit, Blogspot. Or come and see me on Twitter. Yeah, Mummy_Misfit. Come and talk to me there.
Yeah, you're so good with your Twitter. I'm still not great. I was posting something this morning and it didn't appear on my tweet. It appeared in tweets and replies, and I was like, why is that? And I had to look it up, and it was because I'd started the whole thing off with an @. Someone.
That will be why, yeah.
So yes, I had no idea. I need a whole marketing department really, but it's just me still doing it all. Well, it's been amazing talking to you, Amanda, and I hope that you get your writing fingers back on.
Thank you, and you.
Is that the right thing? Your writing fingers back on? That doesn't sound right at all. What else? What's the normal phrase? I don't know. There must be one. What's an analogy for writing?
I'm not quite sure. I'm sure we'll think of it later. I'm still trying to think of the title of that song, and it hasn't come to me.
Oh yeah, but honestly, just going back to that, I think that sounds genius, and I'm sure there'll be so many listeners going, yes, that sounds like a great show.
Yeah, it will be fun.
Basically, what you can all do now, listeners, if you were thinking that like me, and I actually haven't read that one, so I need to do this. We need to all download on Kindle.
Yeah.
We definitely do.
I've just thought of the title of the song, The Queen of Low Self-Esteem.
Oh, how wonderful.
Suddenly popped in my head. Where does that come from? I'll send you a copy of the song. I'll email it to you. You can hear it.
Oh, I bet it's
But you've got to realise that the guy that's singing it is the guy that did the music. It should be a woman singing it. So he's singing it, so it sounds a bit odd that it's a bloke singing it. But it's the heroine. But he's doing it. I'll send it to you. It's really good. Made me cry when Roy wrote it.
An old shoe like you cast aside past my due, along with the passion. We're both out of fashion, and you deceived when I chose to believe your style would enhance me, to have him romance me, just layers that hide who I am deep inside, a facade to cover a totally other me. But I see it now. Although you refined me, you didn't define me, just shallow illusions to hide my protrusions when I shed my skin to reveal what's within. I'm the queen of low self-esteem. And who is she to just take him from me? A vamp or just witless, a cross on his hitless. Did she know? Did she care? He was here when not there. Could she be that malicious? Not even suspicious. But then nor was I when I looked in his eyes. Not a single clue that he'd ever do that to me. Although she's not blameless, his actions were shameless. They both wounded me in their complicity, while she's sending selfies with love hearts to him. I'm the queen of low self-esteem. Why don't men notice me, let alone fancy me? They run from the sight of her. Look at the height of her. All 6'2" of me shouldn't be hard to see. They don't make eyes at her 'cause of the size of her. I bought this on Amazon. She's Amazonian. Mom thought I looked a mess. Sometimes more is less. Why does she? Why can't I always find something wrong? You look like King Kong. How did I really stand a chance with her putting me down all the time? No longer her little girl. I might measure upwards, but I never measured up. All I want is to be as happy and settled as my girlfriends. But while they found the one and they're all having fun, catching rainbows and living the dream, I'm the queen of low self-esteem.
I literally can't. I mean, this must happen, Amanda. I'm like the biggest fan of this now.
Well,
you know,
fingers crossed.
absolutely.
Fingers crossed.
It has to happen, and just don't stop working on that, because that sounds like a dream. It sounds like an absolute dream, and it sounds like the sort of thing that everyone will go wild for as soon as they're allowed out. So
it's going to take a little bit longer. That's all.
These things do, and sometimes, I mean, often you find when you think something's been a huge backward step, that it often ends up being in your favor, and you might find that actually, given this time to work on it a bit more, that you'll hone it and it'll be even better, and that people that weren't available the first time round will be available now.
Things happen for a reason.
On that note, I'll say love you and leave you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to Real Folk with me, Jo Burke.